and Vietnam. I've included a map here to show the spread of Chinese influences. This is important to make sure you understand the concept of sinification, meaning the spread of Chinese culture to the surrounding satellite areas that they were influencing. It's a key concept. Would not be surprised to see it in some format on the AP exam. Alright, so China's influence spreading to Korea, spreading to Japan, spreading to the Vietnam area. It also spread by means of Buddhism, and so that's an important concept to know as well. I've included this map. It shows other things that spread as well. I would have a look at it to make sure you're understanding that, especially for the test over this section. Japan in the Imperial Age. Taika, Nara, and the Heian were the three major dynasties that took place between the 7th and 9th century. They are going to be borrowing from China at China's height and at their height as well. The crisis at Nara and the shift to the Heian, which is Kyoto, is going to involve the sinification in the Japan area. They had the imperial rule and the influence from the Tang dynasty, and so that central authority had been carrying over. One of those was the Taika reforms. They're going to copy the Chinese style of rule, their bureaucracy, their emperor, their social structure. This is heavily opposed by the aristocrats and the Buddhist monks. And so with that, what's going to happen is the Taika reforms are going to fail, and the capital is going to move to Heian, Kyoto. They're going to abandon the reforms, and the aristocrats are going to be restored to power. This is going to start to set the stage for what's going to lead to their feudal period, where they weren't able to hold on to that centralization and move in more to that social structure where you have an emperor, but really everything was more local with your nobles and warriors and peasantry farming. Ultra-civilized in the court life in the Heian era, they will have a code of behavior, so kind of like ethics that we would have with bowing to each other, with the dress that they wore, the gestures that they had, how they ate their food. So if anybody's ever taken a cotillion class, it would be kind of in comparison to that. Aesthetic enjoyment, poetry, women and men took part. This is important to note. Just as in other civilizations, women start out with more rights and they slowly decrease and they lose their rights and their roles in that society. And that's what's going to happen here. At the beginning, women are going to have a lot more rights, and by the time that feudalism is in full thrust in Japan, they are going to have very minimal rights. Included a map of Japan for you to help you understand where Fujiwara Minamoto in the Taira era is located at. The decline of the imperial power, the Fujiwara family is going to dominate the government, and they are going to cooperate with the Buddhists, and you're going to end up forming an elite cult at the top. It's a combination of China's Buddhism with Pure Land and Zen into this salvationist meditation state in Japan, and it's going to form into their own identity. The rise of the providential warrior elite. The Bushi are going to start to gain power. They were the regional lords, and they will have fortresses comparable to the castles in Western Europe, and they were semi-independent. These are your samurai. The reason they're semi-independent, just as the knights in Western Europe could be called by the king, so could the emperor call the samurai to come protect him. Warrior class emerges. Martial arts are esteemed, so hand-to-hand combat, face-to-face combat, one-on-one combat. Special code family honor, death rather than defeat. They rather commit suicide and be slain than to be defeated. Same thing for women at that time as well. It was better to commit suicide than be taken as a concubine, as a slave, or to be raped. Peasants will lose status and freedom. This will become the example of what serfdom was in Western Europe. And then the Salvation Buddhist, it's going to trickle down from the elite down to some of the lower classes. By the 11th and 12th centuries, family rivalries are going to dominate, and you're going to have the Taira and the Minamoto families end up fighting for power against each other. In 838, the Tang Empire is going to start to collapse, and the Japanese embassies will stop sending their emissaries over to China. The Genpei Wars in 1185, the Minamoto family is going to become victorious over the Taira, and they are going to establish the Bakufu, which was the military government. and they will rule. There is a difference between the Bushi, who are more your local warriors. This is a military government where your military is running it. Kamakura was the capital. Now this kind of gets into a three-family cycle here that's a little complicated to understand, but what you need to know is that the Hojo family was really the ones that were in charge. The Minamoto were puppet rulers that were ruling for the Kamakura, who was the lowest of that. Eventually the Kamakura will get overthrown in the 14th century, and the Minamoto will have their power. They will form the Ashikaga shogunate, and they will drive out the last emperor in Kyoto. 467 to 1477, 1467 to 1477 will be the Civil War, and this will be your time period of 300 states or daimyos, and they will this will have completed your feudal period, and they're in full swing. Towards barbarianism or not? This was the question brought up in the book. Going to feudalism, were they becoming more barbaric, or were they still civilized? There's two sides to it. They became very brutal in their warfare. However, they also end up supporting commerce. They end up having a lot of military divisions between all these estates. However, you also are going to thrive in your artistic time period, especially with the Zen Buddhism and the upper elites. So there's kind of the art and commerce, but yet then there's the barbaric warrior side to it as well. All right, Korea, between China and Japan. Korea is going to be the most heavily influenced. We just looked at Japan. Japan was the least influenced because they were not a direct satellite. They were never conquered by China, therefore they pick and choose what they took from China. Korea, on the other hand, is actually going to be conquered early on by the Han in the 4th century BCE. By 109 BCE, the Choson Kingdom had been conquered by the Han, and were having to pay tribute from that point onward. Sinification increased after the fall of the Han, and Buddhism was the important vehicle in that sinification. During the Tang era, they will be paying tribute in order to run their kingdom, but still being heavily influenced by China. The sinification of the Korean elite culture, they are going to favor Buddhism a lot, and they are going to copy the Tang cities. They're going to copy their infrastructure, their way of life, even their buildings. Civilization for the few, the aristocracy was most influenced by Chinese culture. All others were going to serve them. So the aristocrats are going to rise to power. Even the bureaucracy, the scholar gentry with the examination systems was more by birth order than merit, like China was. The Koro collapse and dynastic renewal, revolts caused by labor, tax burdens. It weakened the Silla government and the Koro governments. And by 1231, the Mongols are going to invade. And in 1392, the Yi dynasty was founded and lasted until 1019. However, they were still paying tribute to China all the way up until that point. The Chinese are going to push south to the Red River, and they are going to influence Vietnam. Vietnam will also be another satellite area where they were going to, and they will conquer parts of it. The Qin dynasty will raid into Vietnam in the 220 BCE era. Commerce increased, and the Viets will conquer the Red River lords. They will merge with the Mon, Khmer, and the Thai, and they will form their own distinct culture that was separate from China. Women are going to have the most rights in Korea. Women will have the most rights in Vietnam out of Korea, Japan, and China. So they will have more rights, and even to the point of having some revolts to keep their rights. The conquest and sinification, the Han are going to expand into this area, and they're going to make them pay tribute. They're wanting this region because it was a fertile region for growing rice and grain. From 111 BCE, they will have direct control over the Vietnam area. All right, roots of resistance. All right, your aristocracy and peasants and women are going to participate in resisting China. Pretty much the culture itself was only wanting to do what Japan did and take some of it. Part of the problem was they bordered China. The only reason they weren't fully invaded and taken was probably because the capital of the southern Song was so far away, and so was it in the Tang era as well, and so they weren't fully conquered. But they did have a lot of influence because they were a border area. In 39 CE, you're going to have the revolt of the Trung sisters, just showing the power of women. They were wanting to keep their roles in society and commerce. They wanted to keep their cockfighting. They wanted to keep dyeing their teeth black. They wanted to, women wanted to continue to have the freedom to go to the marketplaces. And so all of those things added into the revolts. All right, and here's the area broken up for you. And I've included a chart comparing Japan, the Mongols, Southeast Asia, and Korea, and China with its influences. And that will conclude chapter 13.